Come closer, children of Africa. Gather around the sacred fire.
Children of the dust, and listen to the rhythm of a heart that refused to stop beating. They will tell you that time is an ocean that washes away all promises. They will tell you that a human being is fragile, that we break when the world crushes us. But I tell you today of a love that outstared the dark, long before her name became a war cry across the savannah. Anya was just a village girl spinning wool by the clear riverbanks, but her heart belonged to Elian, the youngest prince of the realm. Their love was a secret sanctuary, hidden far from the poisonous greed and deadly whispers of the royal palace. But peace is a shadow that vanishes when the sun goes down. The war horns blasted through the mountains, shaking the very dirt beneath their feet. A brutal invading army had breached the northern borders, and the corrupt royal court ordered Prince Elian to lead a suicide vanguard into the jaws of death. On the bitter morning of his departure, beneath the weeping branches of an ancient willow tree, Elian held Anya as if the world were ending. He could feel the wolves waiting in the shadows. He pulled a heavy silver ring from his vest, engraved with a soaring falcon, the symbol of his sacred honor. He slid the cold metal onto her chapped finger, and whispered into her hair, "They will lie to you, Anya. The court will tell you I am ash so they can break your spirit. But look at this ring. Remember my face. Even if the stars fall from the heavens, I will return to make you my queen." Anya looked into his eyes, her voice hardening into a vow that would shake the foundations of the kingdom. "Let them lie," she choked out. "I do not care for a throne, Elian. I care only for the man who bleeds beneath it. I will wait 20 lives if the world demands it." The drums rolled, and Elian turned his horse toward the north. Anya watched through the cold mist until the dust of 1,000 galloping hooves vanished into the gray horizon, completely unaware of the dark net of malice already tightening around her throat. 3 months passed, and the sky broke. The first devastating lie was delivered on the back of a black stallion. Lord Malachar, the ruthless governor of the province whose wealth was built on the literal starvation of the poor, rode into the village square surrounded by heavily armored guards. He did not bring back heroes. He threw a charred, blood-stained flag onto the dirt, the falcon standard of Elian's vanguard. Malachar bellowed to the weeping crowd that the prince's battalion had been butchered in a narrow canyon, their bodies burned to ash. The old king was dead, and Elian's evil cousin, Cedric, had seized the throne. That very night, Malachar kicked open the door to Anya's modest cottage. He didn't look at her with an ounce of pity. His eyes burned with the predatory hunger of a man who wanted to destroy the only thing in the valley his gold couldn't buy. He slammed a heavy leather purse of gold onto her wooden table, the coins spilling out like teeth. "The prince's dust, peasant girl," Malachar sneered. "Forget the ghost. Marry my arrogant son, Julian. Take the luxury of our stone manor, or freeze to death in this mud." Anya did not look at the gold. She looked down at the silver falcon ring, which caught the flickering candle flame, burning against her skin like a brand. She pushed the purse away with cold, unbothered disgust. "Elian is alive," she whispered, "and I do not bargain with vultures." Malachar's face twisted into an ugly, demonic rage. He leaned close, his breath foul with wine. "Pride looks pathetic on a beggar, girl. We will see how long a phantom keeps you warm when the bitter winter frost bites your brittle bones." The years did not just pass, my children. They ground her down. 5 years became 10, 10 became 15, and the kingdom turned into a desolate wasteland under the new king's tyranny. Taxes stripped the literal flesh from the farmers, but Anya remained unchanged. Every single evening, as the sun bled out behind the jagged peaks of the mountains, Anya took her wooden spinning wheel to the decaying village gate. She sat in the freezing dirt, her fingers raw and bleeding, her eyes locked onto that empty, dead road. The village did not support her. Their sympathy turned into bitter, toxic resentment. To them, her unwavering hope was a mirror that showed their own cowardice. They called her the Mad Bride. Children threw sharp stones at her feet, and the elders spat as they walked past. Malachar's son, Julian, grew up to be a monster just like his father. He was obsessed with her, humiliated by her 20 years of silence. One freezing evening, he marched to the gate, his heavy boots crushing the snow, determined to break her once and for all. Julian kicked her wooden spinning wheel, sending the splintered pieces flying into the freezing slush. He grabbed her by the jaw, forcing her to look at her haggard reflection in a frozen puddle. "Look at yourself," he roared. "Your youth is gone. There is silver in your hair. Your prince was eaten by crows 20 years ago. If you do not accept my hand by the anniversary of his departure tomorrow," Julian snarled, We will burn your shack, seize your land, and throw you to the wild hyenas in the wilderness." Anya did not flinch. She pulled her jaw from his grip and looked into his cruel eyes. "Then I have one night left to wait. Listen." The 20th winter arrived with a cold so fierce it stopped the very breath in your throat. The sky turned black as pitch. Anya sat at the gate wrapped in a threadbare shawl, her raw fingers bleeding onto the white snow, her eyes still glued to the horizon. On the exact hour of the anniversary, a thick, unnatural fog rolled over the mountains, completely swallowing the road. Julian arrived with his guards, torches burning wildly in the tempest. "Time's up, crazy woman!" Julian laughed. "Move, or my guards will drag your rotting body through the mud." Anya did not hear him. Her eyes were wide, staring into the white wall of mist. Suddenly, a sound began to echo through the dead silence. A slow, metallic, agonizing scratching sound. The laughter died in Julian's throat. Out of the suffocating fog stumbled a man clothed in rags so caked in filth, and old dried blood they dragged behind him like a dead weight. His hands were a horrific mass of twisted purple scars, his back completely bowed. But when the torchlight hit his face, the crowd screamed in horror. The blind beggar tripped over a frozen ridge, collapsing face first into the freezing mud. Julian burst into a sadistic, booming laugh, kicking a wave of dirty slush onto the man's tattered face. "Look what the dark threw up! Another broken piece of garbage!" But Anya was already moving. She ran past the guards, her boots tearing through the snow, until she fell to her knees in the freezing mud directly in front of the beggar. Trembling, her heart shattering into a million pieces, she placed her warm hands against his scarred, frozen cheeks. The beggar froze. His sightless, milky eyes welled with thick tears. Slowly, with an effort that seemed to cost him his entire soul, he raised his scarred hand and touched the silver ring on her finger. He traced the engraving of the Falcon. "Anya!" he rasped. "Elian!" she screamed, an explosion of 20 years of unadulterated agony bursting from her lungs as she pulled his broken, filthy body against her chest. The village square erupted into absolute chaos. The ghost had flesh. The mad bride was right.
The sacred fire still burns, and so does this story.
Anya lifted Elian, supporting his dead weight on her shoulder, and led him away from their staring, cowardly faces. She slammed her heavy wooden doors shut, locking out the screaming world. Inside, she washed the black mud from his scarred feet and fed him hot broth. But as the clock struck midnight, a terrifying realization settled over Anya's mind. Elian was a master general. Blindness wouldn't keep him lost for 20 years in a small kingdom. She looked down at his naked wrists. The skin was permanently deformed by deep, horrific rings of ancient iron shackles. "Elian," she whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Where have you been? Why did it take 20 years? Elian's shoulders shook, and his voice broke into a gut-wrenching sob. "I was never at the border, Anya. The ambush was a trap paid for by my cousin Cedric, and executed by Lord Malachar. They dragged me back here in chains." Elian choked out. "For 20 long years, Anya, I was not in a distant land. I was locked in the pitch-black dungeon beneath Malachar Stone Manor, less than 3 miles from where you sat spinning your wool every single day. I could smell the smoke from your chimney on the winter wind. They took my sight with a red-hot iron rod so I could never lead an army again." Elian screamed in agony. "Malachar stood over my cage every day, telling me that if I ever spoke my name, he would execute you before my eyes. He used your life as a leash to keep me silent in the dark." The weight of the horror hit Anya like a physical blow. Her neighbors, the lords, the village, they all knew, or they served the monsters who did. The sorrow in her chest did not break her. It burned away, leaving behind a cold, terrifying, and merciless rage. The peasant girl died. A queen of vengeance was born. The gathering in the blizzard. *Griat. Anya did not sleep that night. While the blizzard howled, she slipped into the dark, moving from hut to hut. She did not knock as a beggar. She knocked as a commander, showing the silver falcon ring to the old, forgotten veterans of the vanguard who still lived in the valley. She told them of the prince rotting beneath their feet, while they starved under Cedric's taxes. The old soldiers looked at the ring, their spirits reawakening. They gripped their rusted broadswords, swearing a silent oath of blood and absolute retribution. The next morning, the sun rose dead and white behind the thick fog. Julian marched to Anya's cottage with 5 heavy armored guards, swords drawn, ready to finish his father's work and drag the blind prince back to the slaughterhouse. But when Julian kicked the door open, Anya was already standing in the snow. She didn't cower. She stood tall, holding Elian's silver falcon ring high above her head like a divine weapon. "Seize her!" Julian screamed, but the guards froze. Out of the white fog, the village emerged. The blacksmith stepped forward holding a massive iron hammer. The farmers came with heavy scythes. The old soldiers drew their massive swords. The absolute horror of what had been done to their prince united the valley in a wave of unconditional fury. The armored guards looked at the ocean of angry faces, looked at the sacred falcon ring, and threw their iron shields into the snow. They refused to die for a family of royal liars and thieves. Julian tried to run, but strong hands grabbed him. He was dragged down into the freezing mud, his expensive royal furs soaked in dirty slush, looking up in absolute, paralyzing terror as the blind prince stepped out of the cottage. Anya walked over to the whimpering lord. She did not offer a single word of mercy. She took the silver falcon ring from the air and placed it firmly back into Elian's scarred hand, cementing the return of the true ruler. The fire that started in that small valley could not be contained by the mountains. The news of the living blind prince and the 20-year treason spread across the provinces like a wildfire fueled by decades of hatred for the tyrant Cedric. The northern lords marched. The royal palace guards turned their weapons on their own gates. The people stormed the capital, tearing down the golden banners of the usurper king. King Cedric was dragged from his golden throne in heavy chains, forced to stand in the cold courtyard to face the very dark he had inflicted on his own bloodline for 20 years. Then came the day of the true coronation. The grand cathedral was packed to the columns with thousands of shouting, weeping citizens. The drums beat so loud they sounded like thunder rolling across the entire continent. Elian stepped forward. He could not see the golden crown that was lowered onto his scarred brow. He could not see the bright, beautiful banners flying from the stone towers. But his posture was that of a god of honor. As he sat upon the high throne of his ancestors, he did not care for the cheering crowd. He reached out his scarred hand and held the hand of Queen Anya, the woman who had kept the flame of loyalty burning through 20 years of absolute, torturous night. Under their rule, the kingdom healed. The weeping willow tree in the valley did not die. It bloomed with a green so bright it looked like emeralds, a living monument to the promise that saved a realm. Together, they proved to the world that kingdoms can fall, crowns can rust, and eyes can be blinded, but a soul that knows how to love is a force that the dark can never, ever conquer. The story of Anya and Elian is not just the tale of a lost crown or a broken king. It is a mirror for our own souls. It teaches us that loyalty is a weapon, and patience is a fire that can melt even the coldest iron. True love does not belong to the young or the beautiful. It belongs to those who are brave enough to stand in the dark when everyone else has run for cover. They thought Anya was mad because she could see a truth that their greed and cowardice had blinded them to. But remember this, the greatest prison Elian suffered was not the stone dungeon of Lord Malachar. The greatest prison was the silence imposed by fear, and it was a woman's unyielding refusal to forget that finally tore those iron gates down. Remember her name, remember the bride who waited, for the fire she carried is the same fire that breathes inside you. Sleep now, and let your hearts be brave. If you were Anya, would you have kept that ring for 20 long years while your youth slipped away and your entire village mocked you? Or would you have taken Malachar's gold to survive? And what of Elian? Was he right to stay silent in that dark cell for 20 years to protect Anya's life? Or should he have risked everything to scream his name and fight his way back to her sooner?
Until we gather again around the sacred fire, go in peace and may wisdom guide your path.